should give first chance to a lady again. Apparently, just to take one of your, a minute of your time, I was wondering why we have been talking about ladies first. Recently only I got to know. I don't know whether you are aware about that. Apparently, long ago there was a girl and a boy, falling, loving with each other, and due to some reason, both parents were against, and they both decided what is next. Okay, either you have to. Then they decided anyway. They would have been accountants, probably would have evaluated various options, decided to commit suicide. So then they thought, okay, they were wondering, what sort of action they should take. Different, options evaluated. Finally, decided to go to a mountain and jump over from the mountain. Jump the mountain, and then decided. Then they wanted to see who is going to jump first, which is again important question. Finally, after debate, this poor and maybe this young guy, a boy, decided, let me jump first. So he jumped. Then what happened? This girl thought, why should I do that? Since then, I think then we thought, okay, ladies first. So that's something for you, to have your appetite. Yes, so let me ask Ranga. I think Ranga has been given, some interesting questions. And Ranga, over to you. I think you can first read the question also for the benefit of others, and then you can take us. Thank you.
Okay. I've got my mic on. I think I've got one question and probably three suggestions. One is to say, do your dye plants follow the zero effluent concept that is practiced in some companies in India? I don't get what the effluent concept is, zero effluent concept, but if I'm right, you're asking me whether we treat and reuse the effluent. Is that it? Yes. Yeah? Okay.
Does it go into the...
It doesn't. So if I may answer, water, if you look at, we purify totally, and some we take for agricultural purposes. For example, we've got 1,000-acre park in India, so we use that for gardening. Then, yeah, so if it's a sludge, if it's a solid waste, there are instances that we have even used that for making bricks. And then in the case of Sri Lanka, what we've really done is use these bricks to make houses for the tsunami affected people as well. So we've had various uses that we've made, but never do we send the sludge or the solid waste just like that into the soil. We don't do that. Anything else?
Can you also suggest?
Sort of a... this says you have an opportunity to convert fabric waste into low-cost sanitary napkins that could be used for the poor women, rural women. I really like this. See, what we right now do is we use the fabric waste to convert it into paper pulp. But if somebody has a way of doing this, I think you should get in touch with our environmental guys. Fine. Because I think especially in India, we are in a very, very rural community in Vizag, and we can afford to do all of this. Thank you very much. Okay, part B, I think you're talking of solar panels?
No, I'm talking about solar concentrators.
Concentrators. Okay, for the AC, it's a suggestion, right? Yeah, so this time what we are trying to do is experiment this in our head office that I showed you. We haven't really gone into it for some time because the payback period is a bit high, and we really wanted to look at, do you really invest for the sake of investing, or do you, go about it in a very sustainable manner. So this is one capital expenditure form that my two guys over there will probably take to the head office and get it approved. That's on the cards. Thanks. This is also for me. How do you? What's this? Oh, carbon footprint. Read this question, please. How do you calculate, is it? The carbon footprint of products.
Can you read
Activities
the question?
outsourced.
Okay.
Carbon footprint of activities outsourced. Okay, good question. Now, we have embarked on a traceability campaign. So right now, our carbon footprint is only on the processes that are inside. We monitor what is processed inside. So if it's outsourced, we have just embarked on a traceability concept, especially with some of our customers, where we will go deep into the entire supply chain, and each one will have to use a system to really put in the data. There will be audits that happen physically, and this is just begun. So it's way too early for me to say that we are doing it with the outsourced companies. Right now, it is our processes that we are trying to get going. I hope I answered the question.
There are a few questions as well as some comments or suggestions as well. First one is it possible to start commercial agriculture on a sustainable basis in the tea and rubber plantations and the estates? Now, this is happening, yes, it is possible. Of course, there is a lot of investment that is required, particularly on the tea plantations, to bring in practices. There are several estates, even in the Haley's estates, that have got sustainable practices for replanting, for chemical-free zones, etc. So it's possible, except that these require a lot of investments, and sometimes based on various factors, including factors beyond the control, wage, labor costs, sanctions from various quarters to prevent us selling into the Middle East and Iran. These affect the industry and then also the prices. So given those constraints, I must say that there is a lot of initiatives to bring sustainable agriculture into the plantation sector. And we have rainforest accreditations as well for several of our estates. So it is happening, except that maybe not at the extent we would like it to happen. Hopefully going forward that should happen. The second one was about have you established demonstration farms which demonstrate best farming practices? In Sri Lanka there are several, both from the government side as well as in the private sector as well. Some of the larger private sector companies have established this, and I refer to nucleus farms. And in the nucleus farms that happens, where various new practices are done, groups of farmers are brought in, shown the practices, etc. And also experimentation with new cultivation methods. There is another question also related to use of chemicals, or at least two questions. Even the reduced use of chemicals, which is something farmers have got to get used to, and there are new concepts really in this aspect of using chemicals. I know the one question is also about that the output of agriculture depends on using chemicals, which has adversely affected the life of the people. And is this sustainable? That is the question. And two questions also, that Haley's also markets chemicals as well, and therefore my comments on it as well. I have a comment here, is that for agriculture to be successful, you need a lot of inputs. You need chemicals, you need fertilizers, you need some amount of crop protection, but you need modern agriculture as well, including things like mechanization, and also you need good management practices. Now the key is, how do you do this in a way without harming the environment? And for this, I think one needs to look at modern agriculture. For example, there is a concept in agriculture today which is called integrated pest management, where you use minimum amount of chemicals. Only when you spot a particular pest attacking your crops, you have to apply it. So this requires a lot of training. Training of whom? Training of the farmers. And this, companies like Haley's show a lot of stewardship in encouraging farmers to go towards integrated pest management practices, for example. I must say it's a very emotional thing when we say chemicals. People think that chemicals are bad. Everything has got a positive and a negative. A sword or a knife can be used for positive as well as negative, and so can chemicals. It's very difficult to imagine agriculture globally. If you look at the US, Europe, all of the countries, there is some use of chemicals. It's just that it has to be used in a responsible way and in a balanced way. The balance that balances the needs of society as well as the health and the welfare and well-being of the people. I hope that answers the question.
You have one question or suggestion, Santosh?
Yeah, it's a suggestion.
Can you read for the benefit of others?
Thank you. It's a nice one. Mr. Khatri says that please start the concept of ROI, which he names it as return on imagination. I really like it. But the first thing which came to my mind when I read it was the GE's Eco-Imagination program. And today that's a company which stands out for imagining products which clearly differentiate from their competition today. So there are companies which are benefiting out of that imagination thing. But a nice concept, but we need to think about it a little more, how it can be conceptualized. Thank you.
Rizvi, I said that I have one question, but anyway, you answered that question about the usage of chemicals, especially ladies and gentlemen, you are aware the amount of chemicals we use for this agriculture sector, but then how to strike a balance. But anyway, I think you answered at the end of the day. Shakti is, I think, silent. I don't know whether you don't have any questions? We have not got any questions. That means I think his presentation must be very precise, clear. But I have one question. This, you are talking about HR. Now, general perception in the, let us say, these garment industries, you know, there's a labor exploitation and things like that. I don't think, but can you comment on that, you know, now whether you have shift duties, maybe sometime you got to work Saturdays, Sundays, throughout the year, 24 hours, not enough to meet your targets and things like that, because you are also, you know, you have your targets to achieve end of the day. Can you kindly, you know, comment on that?
Yeah, I think that era, obviously there are operational challenges in any business where you have to manage the peaks and troughs. But there are also very stringent guidelines today, especially when you work with globally established brands, where the consumers are looking at them, looking at all their moves. And so they have very stringent guidelines. And as early as the early 2000s, especially with the Global Compact and all of these standards that have come into play, the customers also have their own compliance ratings. So they have stringent regulations in terms of monitoring your work environment, even the distance between machinery, the light, the lux levels, the working conditions, the overtime conditions, the paying on time, making sure the statutory and regulatory payments are made. So the customers are fairly stringent in the regulation and the regulation of it. But apart from that, I think Sri Lanka, perhaps, has themselves set very high standards. And for those of you who have perhaps visited the operations out in Sri Lanka, or especially the companies that are working out of Sri Lanka, you would realize that the standards are very high. And like I said earlier in the presentation, these standards have been set even prior to a lot of these organizations, global organizations, setting these compliance standards. Because I think the thinking has always been, if you create the right environment, that is fundamental to getting, ensuring that you have a very committed workforce and ensuring you do the right thing by the teams that you have. There is no compromise in that.
Thank you very much. I think that brings to end of our session. Let me again, on behalf of the organizations and organizers, thank Santosh, Ranga, Rizvi, Shakti for the excellent presentations and deliberations. And Professor Vatavala, thank you very much for inviting us. It's an excellent, and I hope that you would have enjoyed this session. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Now to hand over the token of appreciation, now I invite Professor Lakshmana R. Vatavala, President of CMA Sri Lanka, to hand over the token of appreciations for our session speakers. Mr. Sujiva Rajapaksa. Mr. Santosh Jairam. Mrs. Ranga Ranmadugala. Mr. Rizvi Zahid. Mr. Shakti Ranatunga. Thank you, Professor.